So there was a big decrease among the forces that were fighting for fundamental social change, and the Islamist right took advantage of that, and they came together. Both Khamenei, the supreme leader, as he's called, the Ayatollah Khamenei, came together to back Ahmadinejad as a representative of the reformist right. And they had not only a program of reimposing a lot of the things that had been changed, reimposing the puritanical religious codes, but they also had an agenda, because the privatization that was going on was going all to private capital, all to Rafsanjani's buddies. And the clerical elite, their base is in the state-owned industries. And so their power was being eroded, with Rafsanjani and all the other private capitalists getting the benefits of the privatization. So the Islamist right had a double agenda: reimpose the puritanical religious decrees, back them with militias, the Revolutionary Guard, repress the people, and protect the chunk of capital that they wanted for their own allies and cronies. And at the same time, they postured as a populist alternative to Rafsanjani. So Rafsanjani had done all this nasty stuff. We're on the side of the people. The Islamist right will be on your side, and but they still didn't achieve much popular support for their agenda. The voter non-participation I already mentioned, and it was a narrow victory in 2005 that brought Ahmadinejad to power. And in fact, he's implemented a entirely unpopular agenda of religious restrictions and thorough neoliberalization. So remember, he was the one who was brought in to oppose neoliberalism. He's actually an advocate of neoliberalism. He's removed state subsidies for staple goods. He's implemented a massive privatization agenda that will eventually sell off 80% of the state sector. So he's one of the arch neoliberals. This is far from the populist anti-imperialist that we hear about from some chunks of the left. He's already privatized the post office, 2 state-owned banks, and 5% of the shares in state-owned steel companies. And the Islamist right is doing what with this privatization? They're giving it to their buddies instead of Rafsanjani. And this is a real threat to Rafsanjani, because he wants to rule Iran. But if all the money and all the privatized industries are going to Ahmadinejad's buddies, then Ahmadinejad and his network of crony capitalists can become a serious rival and really the center of power in the country of Iran. So that's what led to this massive split in the ruling class in the run-up to the 2009 election. So you had one chunk, Rafsanjani and Mousavi, against Ahmadinejad and Khamenei on the other side. And there was a big battle over the spoils of privatization. But the Rafsanjani and Mousavi could also say, and connect with mass popular aspirations, we're against all this religious codes that are repressing your lives. We're for more rights for women, all sorts of reforms that tap into the deep grievances that exist under the clerical regime. And so in mass numbers, students, women, workers, ethnic minorities, angry at the denial of democratic rights, galvanized behind the agenda of the reformist Mousavi. And it really surprised not only the supreme leader and Ahmadinejad, it also surprised Mousavi and Rafsanjani. They had no idea that there was this mass aspiration from below that was quelling up in the country of Iran. And so people hoped that Mousavi would at least be some kind of vehicle to open space for organizing, because very difficult to organize when you have thousands upon thousands of religious police. The Revolutionary Guard. You get arrested if you try and have a movement. You get arrested if you try and organize your workplace. Under those conditions, a little space for democracy may open up the space for your own self-organization. So people gravitated to the Mousavi and Rafsanjani, Rafsanjani's backed Mousavi reform campaign, and they came out in the hundreds of thousands to Mousavi's rallies. And a lot of the language seemed to be from from an Islamic tradition, but it was a convenient vehicle to legitimize protests of all sorts. And this is what led to the virtual coup that happened, the electoral coup, because Ahmadinejad and Rafsanjani were faced with the fact that Mousavi was going to win, He and his cronies like Rafsanjani are going to get the big piece of the pie, and not only that, it's going to destroy their religious puritanical codes that are imposing, and open up the thing they most feared back when they came to power in 1979, the self-activity of working class people in their millions in their workplaces. And so they conducted their virtual coup. It triggered this mass demonstration movement throughout the country of Iran, and in turn, the regime has clamped down with utmost brutality, as I said, jailing and torturing hundreds, leading to the first martyr of the movement. People probably saw the tragic YouTube video of Neda Aga Sultan, who was gunned down in the streets by the religious police. But still yet, the movement has not been quelled. Obviously, it's off the streets on the scale that it had been, but the regime is still faltering. You look at it, it's fundamentally cracked. The clerical establishment is split. Whole chunks of the clerical elite are backing Mousavi and Khamenei and Rafsanjani, saying, we need a revote, we need a referendum. This is destroying the Islamic State. So the crack in the clerical elite in Qom is profoundly deep. The ruling class itself is split between the different wings of capital. There's no signs yet of a military split, but who knows where this is going? We're at the very early stages of this movement.